Your chainsaw has a winter and summer mode. So if you've ever experienced your chain jumping off the bar, this is probably the reason. Richard here with the Woodland Ranch YouTube channel, and in this video we'll be talking about how I maintain my chainsaws. If you have a chainsaw that you feel isn't cutting right, then this video is definitely for you. But if not, stick around because you might learn something new anyway. Now this is a Stihl MS 400C. It's about a 2022 model, I think. But the brand or model doesn't matter at all. Just a few things will be a little bit different for you, like this cover here. But I'm sure you can figure out how to take that off on a different chainsaw. Alright, as you can see, there's quite a bit of junk in here. First thing we'll do is clean off some of this junk here. And for that, I'm just going to use some compressed air. And the reason for that is just to prevent this junk from falling into the carburetor when we take off the air filter. And on this specific chainsaw, it's quite easy to remove the air filter. You just twist it and it comes right off. Now, looking at this filter, it's getting close to the end of its life here. And the main thing you'll want to inspect is the inside of the filter. If that's dirty, then you can just throw it in a bin and get a new one. If it's just dirty on the outside, you can try to clean it off. Just remember that any dirt and grime stuck to the outside of the filter will prevent airflow. So I'll get my air gun and I'll start blowing from the inside out. Make sure though that you're not blowing all this dirt straight into the carburetor. So do this at a distance away from the chainsaw. Or you can cover this up. You can do something like that. Alright, once that's done, we can put the air filter back on. Now let's get the bar and chain off of here. Could have done that first, but that's fine. I'm just going to use the impact driver to take it off. It's a 19mm. Loosen up that chain. It's a lot easier to work on this when there's no bar on it. Alright, now we'll inspect the flywheel area. And that's just going to be 4 bolts. Now one of these bolts are larger than the other ones, but it's quite easy to remember. It's going to be this one. Now we can remove this cover. We'll just lift this up a little bit. There's a little bit of dirt in here that we're going to clean out. And the flywheel area itself here looks absolutely fine. We'll clean it a little bit, of course, but this is nothing to worry about. Let's go ahead and inspect the clutch. And all you need here is a screwdriver to get that clip out. I don't know if you're able to see this, but there's a groove in the clip right there that you're going to shove your screwdriver into, and you can sort of just twist it out. Be a little bit careful though, because this clip will fly everywhere, and then if you can't find it and you don't have a spare, then you'll have a headache on your hands. But all you got to do is hold it with your finger while you twist it out. There we go. We'll remove this washer here, and then we can take the sprocket off, then we can take the clutch out. And they're usually not that tight, but this one seems to be a little bit tight. Not sure what's up with that. Oh, right. I have the brake on. Let's go ahead and do that. Now we should be able to pull this off. That is the clutch drum. I called it a cover, but it's a drum. Sometimes I get mixed up with these English words for parts, but that's just the way it is. And here's your roller bearing. You'll just want to inspect that all the rollers are there and that the casing isn't damaged. But this is completely fine. Looks brand new, so that's nice. Now we can remove the clutch. Now this is where an impact driver comes in handy. If you don't have one, then you'll have to lock up the piston or the flywheel in order to get this off. And it's going to be 19 again. And the treads are links, so they go the other way around. There's the clutch. And for this, you'll just want to make sure that all of these springs are in place. Another test you can do, if you take the clutch like this, use your thumbs and press in the middle. And you can bend the clutch out like that. And when you let go, it should go back to its original state. And you shouldn't be able to pull these too far apart. But this clutch is fine. And we're going to clean it up, of course. Put that to the side. Then we can have a look inside of here. Let's get this washer out. And right there is your oil pump worm gear. Let's get that out and I'll show you something. So this right here is what drives your oil pump. If your saw isn't oiling, then this is most likely the culprit. What happens is that this tip here breaks off, which means the crankshaft, or the clutch drum rather, doesn't bring this around with it, because the threads on here is what drives your pump. I think I have a pump actually, and I can show you. Alright, I couldn't find anything. So another way that these can fail, if you have the older type of worm gear, like this one, the gears here, or this plastic piece, just starts spinning inside of the metal piece. So that's another way that these can fail. And here you have an upgraded aftermarket version. And as you can see, this is the original, and there's quite a difference. So these are the 3 different versions that I've seen. I'm sure there's more. But if this is broken on your chainsaw, and you're going to replace it, I would highly suggest to get an upgraded aftermarket version, and it's probably cheaper as well. So we're not going to put this back. I'll be installing this one instead. I found the oil pump, so I can show you how these work. Sits inside of here like that. You can see the gear down there that's turning, and then it pumps the oil out through here and up to your bar here, and then it's fed into this tiny hole here, and then it goes inside the groove of your bar and it's picked up by the chain. The chain will drag quite a bit of oil up to this sprocket in order to lubricate that. There's also a tiny hole at the sprocket here that you can use to manually lube it a little bit extra if you want to, especially useful if you have a very long bar. And then what drives this worm gear is this drum right here, and as you may be able to see, there is a tiny groove right there that the tip of this sits inside of, and it sits inside of it just like that. So when the clutch turns, so does this worm gear, and that's what drives your oil pump. Another thing that can go bad on these are the threads on this plastic here. I've never seen that because this usually breaks or it becomes loose and starts spinning before the threads are bad. As you can see, it's quite dirty in here, so we're going to go ahead and clean this up. First thing we're going to do is just drench this in some WD-40. This side isn't too bad, but we'll do it here as well. And then also all of this. And the clutch drum. And you'll want to inspect these wear pads for your chain. Here's a brand new one, but these ones are completely fine, so I'm not going to change them. Get this soaking a little bit. And this one as well. Now, one thing that you'll want to do before you start cleaning this, which I forgot to do, you'll want to avoid getting any sort of junk inside of the oil pump. So take your worm gear and put it in, just to keep dirt from getting inside of there. We'll just take a small screwdriver and start poking at this, trying to get out as much as possible. Now, I'm not one to get this absolutely spotless. Some people are way more particular than I am with this, but I like to get it as clean as reasonably possible, in my opinion. And just blast this out of here. And we'll just clean this out as best we can. We're not going to spend too much time here. Something like that. That's more than good enough for my standards. We'll take this off of here. Your chain tightening mechanism is behind here, so it's a good idea to keep that clean. This does not want to come off for some reason. There we go. It's not too bad behind here, but we can clean out some of this junk right here. That's fine. Now this plate has two purposes. One is to protect your chain tightening mechanism here, and the other is as a sacrificial wear part. So instead of destroying your housing whenever your chain rubs against here, you can just replace this cheap part. I have a bunch of these, but this one seems completely fine, so we're not going to be changing it. Alright, I think that's pretty good for this side. This is almost spotless, but if you have a lot of junk in here, you can go ahead and pull the flywheel off and clean behind it if you want to. We'll just go ahead and clean a little bit of this And here's another thing that you'll want to make sure of. If you have a lot of junk and grime built up inside of these ribs here, then you'll reduce the cooling efficiency, which could wreck your cylinder and piston. This one is very clean though, so we can skip that. Let's go ahead and reassemble this. We'll clean out the clutch drum. You'll want to clean this very thoroughly and use some brake cleaner, acetone, denatured alcohol also works. We'll set this aside for now and clean up the clutch. This is a perfect time to get out your brake cleaner. I don't have that, unfortunately, I'm all out, but we'll make it work here in a second with some denatured alcohol. And the most important part to get completely clean and dry is this outer edge here. Another thing to keep in mind is that when dirt and grime builds up inside of the clutch here, this thing spins at 11,000 RPMs. And so if the balancing is off here and this starts to wobble a little bit, you can destroy the bearings in your crank. So it's quite important to keep this as clean as you can. Have you ever driven a car with the rims full of snow and the car starts to wobble at higher speeds? Same thing, it's not good. So any rotating parts here you'll want to keep as clean as possible. So with our new worm gear installed here, we can go ahead and put the washer plate on. And then we can put our freshly cleaned clutch back on. And I forgot to clean the brake. So let's take this off again. You'll want to clean the brake pad here as well. Clutch back on again. And then we'll go ahead and clean our roller bearings a little bit. And then I like to do just a tiny amount of grease. Shove that in there, pack it in a little bit, and then we'll clean off the excess. Don't want too much on this. Something like that is more than enough. So we'll put that on. You don't want grease to be thrown into your clutch. And then we'll clean the drum as well. Denatured alcohol. It's very important that this is clean and dry. And then when you go to put this on, you'll want to feel that the worm gear pin sets inside of this groove here. And you can feel that quite easily. There we go. And then you have this washer here that keeps everything in place with a circlip on the outside. I have some upgraded washers. As you can see, this is quite thin and flimsy material, whereas these are much thicker and solid machined steel. So we're going to put one of those on. Let's put the sprocket on first. And the sprocket tells you what type of pitch you can have on your chain. This is a 3/8 pitch sprocket, and this has seven sprockets around it. There's 7 of these holes here for the drive links to run inside of. So if you want to run a different chain, you can swap out these sprockets. I have a few different ones of those as well. So this is a 325 pitch, still 7 drive link sprocket. And then I have this one, which is just another 3/8 7 drive link sprocket. But we're going to stick with the original 3/8 here. So we'll mount that, then we'll put the washer and then the clip. Use a pair of pliers to get this back in. There we go. Now you'll want to clean this plate pretty good. Take some Scotch-Brite and clean this thoroughly. And the reason for that is if you have a lot of dirt and grime built up on this, then your bar might not seal properly against the oiling port here. And what happens then is that the oil seeps out between your bar and this plate, and it'll run out underneath your chainsaw, which you don't want. So I like to clean this up pretty good. Some denatured alcohol. There we go, and then we can install it. That's probably gone forever. Well, that bolt is nowhere to be seen, so I'll just steal this one. Alright, I think this side of the chainsaw is done. Clean this up. Alright, that's fine. Put this back on here. Some people put Loctite on these bolts, I do not. Just clean up some of this here. Let's check the spark plug. And it's running a little bit rich. We'll clean this up a little bit. Don't want to do too much here because We'll mess up the gap. So this is a CMR6H NGK spark plug. Just cleaning up the sealing ring here. All right, we'll keep an eye on that. Might have to adjust the carb a little bit. But silicone grease. I think that's fine. So here's something you may or may not know, but your chainsaw has a winter and summer mode. On every single chainsaw that I've ever owned, there's always been a plastic piece that you can swap around. Right, there's a sun symbol and there is a snowflake. And on this piece, there is a tab right there and one right there. So if we put this way, that tab lines up with the sun. And if we swap it the other way around, tab lines up with the snowflake. Basically what it does is allow some of the air from the cylinder, the warm air from the engine, to get into the air filter chamber with the carburetor, and it'll suck some of that warm air back into the cylinder to keep the saw at operating temperatures during the colder days. So since it's winter now, we'll keep it open. Let's clean this out a little bit. And let's clean out this cover here. Keep it decently clean. So now we're going to put the bar and chain on here. You'll want to keep this pretty clean as well. A little bit of degreaser on here. Now on your bar there's a tiny hole right there, and same on the other side. You'll want to clean those as often as you can and keep those holes free so that the oil can pass through, because this is the sealing surface for your chain oil. Every time you take it off, flip it the other way around. All right, the main camera died, so I'll just have to do the rest of this video on the GoPro, but that should be fine. We're done with all the close-up stuff, I think, so. All right, anyway, what I like to do now is tighten up the chain a little bit. Something like that. And then we'll put the cover on. We won't tighten it completely. And now I'll show you how I tighten up all of this. So what I like to do, I'll put the chainsaw on its tip right here. So I'll hold my saw just like this. If you pay attention to the bar, if I lift up the saw now, can you see that? So if I were to tighten up the chain while the saw was sitting on the bench, the entire weight of the bar would keep pressure downwards, right? And you can see the difference in the tightness of the chain. Right now it's pretty tight. But if I hold it like this, it's pretty loose. And if you tighten up your chain when your bar is hanging off like this, when you go to use the saw, it won't be long until the bar seats in the upright position, because you're putting pressure downwards on the saw, and eventually it'll work itself up to the topmost position anyway. And then your chain is loose, and potentially it'll hop off your bar. So if you've ever experienced your chain jumping off the bar, this is probably the reason. So put the tip of your bar on your workbench or a log or something and hold your chainsaw in the handle, and then you can tighten your chain. Right there's perfect. And then once your chain is as tight as it should be, you'll keep holding your chainsaw like this, and then we tighten down these bolts. And there you have it. And we'll clean this off just for you guys. That's fine. So that's the way I tighten up my chain and secure the bar. And this way, you'll keep the chain from becoming loose and potentially coming off the bar. Maybe you knew this technique already, or maybe you didn't. Leave a comment and let me know. Another problem I see people having is that the chainsaw will cut perfectly straight up and down, but once they go horizontal or at an angle with it, it just doesn't cut at all. And then they'll go buy a new chain or file up the one they have so that it's sharp and nice, but it still doesn't cut as it should. And the reason for that is that your bar is worn. If you've never flipped your bar, you can try doing that, and that might solve the problem if you've never done it before. Because the reason this is happening is that the grooves in your bar has become too wide. Either because you've used the wrong chain in the bar, or perhaps because the bar is just so old and worn that the grooves have now become too wide for the chain. If you're lucky and the bar has never been flipped before, You can go ahead and try that. It might work, but it might not as well. And the other solution is to buy a new bar. Now, the last servicing part that we have to do, and it is my least favorite part. Now, it doesn't look like the filter. Oh, there's quite a bit of junk down in there though. Yeah. Okay. Well, this needs cleaning out. Yeah, so basically you'll want to clean out your tank and, if necessary, change out the filter. Basically, you'll just slosh this around and you can just clean it with gasoline. That's fine. We can take a look at that filter. Grab yourself a pair of needle nose pliers and you'll just try to fish that filter out of there. And it can be a bit of a pain to get this out. There you go. This is not terrible, but not perfect either. So we'll go ahead and change that. You can just pull this straight off, like so, and install the new one. And then we'll shove that back in there. All right, I went ahead and changed it again because I'm not sure if this has been used before, but it's kind of dirty inside of there. So changed it again, shove that in here. And then it's just the same thing for the oil filter. Now this is completely full of oil. Should have done this before I put the bar back on, but whatever. Then we'll put some gasoline in here. Doesn't have to be much, just a tiny bit. We'll put the lid back on and then we'll kind of just slosh it around in there. And then we'll do the same thing here. There's a filter down in there. Let's go ahead and grab a new one first, because these ones can be a bit, they tend to fall back down when you let go of them. Quite tricky, these ones. All right, well, we got the old filter off here, but now I'm about to lose the hose. On with the new one. Can you see that even? It's a bit difficult with these GoPro cameras, but we got it changed, so that's good. You can also go ahead and inspect the O-rings on these lids. They tend to go bad. It's also important not to overfill these, because if you do, there might not be enough room for this lid. You can see all of this goes into the tank. So if you fill it up to here and you go to reinstall this, you might be able to get it to sort of latch in place, but it won't be closed completely. It won't be sealed. So it'll just pour out once you flip your chainsaw back up. That has happened to me more times than I'd like to admit. All right, well, I think that's pretty good. Let's go ahead and fill her up. See if she runs. We haven't really done anything that would make it not run though, but it's always good to make sure. No, that's gas. God damn it. Clean this up a little bit here, and then we'll see if she runs. Yeah, it oils now. Probably just needed some time. Ja? Goedemiddag. I was out and about today and I bought this 3-in-1 servicing kit from Stihl. This kit comes with an air filter, a fuel filter and a spark plug. So I just wanted to show you that this exists. You'll obviously have to find the correct part number for your chainsaw, but at least now you know. Well, there you have it. That's how I service my chainsaw. If you had fun or learned anything today, please go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps me out. And if you have anything you want to share, go ahead and leave a comment. I always enjoy reading those. And while you're down there, there's also a subscribe button too. Yeah. But that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.